On. Welcome to the program, Ben.
Glenn, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So tell me why you're running for Senate and what are the biggest issues and why we should trust you.
Yeah, I'm not a politician. I'm running for office because we owe our kids freedom. We owe it to our kids to pass on to them a great and free and opportunity-filled world, and we're not on a path to doing that. President Reagan would regularly talk about the fact that in a republic, we're always only one generation away from the extinction of freedom. Our kids don't get it by the bloodstream. They don't get it in their genes. They get it because we teach them the American dream and the American work ethic, and we've got a crisis in the country.
Okay, so what is the biggest, what do you see coming down the road?
Well, I mean, let's start with the fact that we have these screaming matches in Washington when $14.3 trillion debt ceiling limit goes to 16, goes to 17, and we don't even have a public that we're helping engage on the fact that our true unfunded obligations numbers more than 4 times bigger than that. We're on a path toward a Greek-style debt crisis. Politicians think they're Santa Claus. They make promises that don't add up, and then instead of dealing honestly with them, they add another entitlement in the form of Obamacare.
What is your background?
I'm a 42-year-old non-politician. Most of my background is in business turnaround projects. So I've worked for Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey and Company, and spent the last 5 years as college president in my hometown. 130-year-old Lutheran liberal arts college was going out of business, and I was blessed to be a part of a team that came in to turn it around, and we're now the fastest-growing school in the Midwest.
Okay, there is a story out today that I just find remarkable, that David Stockman came out and said the Fed's moves put us into economic calamity. The Fed said it could end its stimulus program in the fall. The stock market tanked. Stockton now says we should have never painted ourselves so deep in this QE corner in the first place, because the whole policy is false. How do we get out of this? What do you agree with that? And how do we get out of that?
Yeah, so I haven't seen the news of this morning particularly, but when you're on the trail with Nebraskans, our folks now talk about Obamacare not just as a failed worldview, as just not just failed legislation, but an entire failed worldview. And one component of that is you don't even have to pretend there's budget seriousness. If you pass budgets that make no sense, you can just print more money with quantitative easing around 4, 5, and 6. Eventually, reality comes to bear in this situation, and I think Greece is really the best picture of what ultimately happens. You can't kick the can down the road.
But you don't have a society that cares about this for the most part. You've got a president who is missing all of his national security meetings while the world is literally on fire. You have budgets not even being passed, and debts going through the roof. You have now the polls back on Obamacare with the president actually starting to climb back up again. There is we are as disconnected as a society from reality as Wall Street is from actual real economic numbers.
You know, you're right. To your opening point there about the disengagement of the public, I think George Will had a column last month that only about 40% of the American electorate even know that we have 3 branches of government. So we've obviously got a crisis. In a republic, we believe in the self-discipline and the virtue of the people as the guardian of liberty. And if we're disengaged, we've got a real problem. And obviously we've got that in particular with the next generation. We've bred cynicism and disengagement and false promises, and the crisis of the work ethic, I think, is as big a deal as anything particularly political we could talk about. But inside those that are politically engaged, I do also find some hope. Because on the ground in Nebraska, we've got serious people. When you go to town halls in Nebraska, and we're getting some of the biggest crowds in the history of Nebraska politics right now, these people stand up, and 33% of our jobs are ag-dependent jobs. And if you don't get your crops in on time in the spring, you're not going to get them out before the frost in the fall. And there's no way the federal government can just write a new rule to make up a different reality.
Well, let me talk to you about that, because I think I live in a farming community. Part-time when I'm not living here in the city, and I see two sides of things. I see the side of farmers that everything makes sense. When you live on a farm, everything makes sense. You understand how the world works. You understand how nature works because you're part of it. You also understand how God works because you are dependent on Him. You could do everything right, and your crops may not come in because you're dependent on Him. You're also dependent on one another. That being said, the other side that I see is a farming society that is dependent on subsidies.
Yeah, so let's break those apart. Maybe a brief comment on the latter half, and then let's go back to the former as well. The federal government has so perverted the marketplace for different types of insurance all over the place. I mean, in healthcare, we pretend we're talking about health insurance when we're usually talking about the collectivized prepayment of mostly predictable medical expenses, where Washington gets to be the center. In an agricultural farm bill, the most recent one, 975 pages, lots and lots of slop in there. There's a $150 million subsidy for maple syrup marketing budget. I don't see where you find, from good and necessary inference in the Constitution, some way that the federal government should be helping us subsidize sweeteners for our breakfast products. It's a whole bunch of mess. But partly the mess is created by the fact that normal farming does require there to be some sort of crop insurance market, and the feds have perverted that. But I think your opening points are the right places to drill deepest. Our worldview in America has always been based on the idea that most of what defines meaning is outside of and prior to government. You know, we travel the state right now in our campaign bus. We have the 22,000 pages of implementing regs of Obamacare. And they're 9.5 feet of paper, and we have a big metal rod through it, and we anchor it in a dolly, and we put it at the front of the room at all of our town halls. And we contrast it with the Homestead Act of 1862, which is the piece of legislation that led to the settling of 270 million acres of the former Louisiana Purchase. That Homestead Act of 1862 is 2 pages long. It created a framework for ordered liberty, but it didn't think that government defined meaning. Local families and communities and worshiping communities and civil society and mediating institutions and entrepreneurs define meaning. And we need to recover that sense of America.
But nobody, again, I go back to nobody wants that sense of America. I shouldn't say nobody. There's a large growing number. When the president is on Ellen today and not dealing with serious journalists, serious issues. Yesterday, he went to a movie screening in the middle of the workday while Russia was invading Ukraine. He went to a private movie screening of a Cesar Chavez movie in the White House. So nobody cares. So how do you get people to have that conversation on a national scale?
Well, unfortunately, we're probably headed toward a path where crisis is what's going to focus the mind, right? I mean, William F. Buckley's old line, there's nothing that's wrong in America that a Great Depression couldn't fix. Unfortunately, we're headed down a path toward either a debt crisis domestically with obviously international consequences, or we're going to have more foreign policy crises. Don't mean to go down the Ukrainian path here, but one of the obvious lessons we're going to learn from this 5 and 10 years from now is countries that have a chance to go nuclear are not going to believe the promises of the U.S. and the international community. Hey, give your nukes back to the Soviet Union, and we'll guarantee your territorial sovereignty.
That was obviously a problem that we should have. I mean, we should never have told them to get rid of their nukes. Let me ask you this: where are you on foreign policy? Because I'm a guy who 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I probably would have said, hey, we gave them our word. Putin is a very bad man. You can't let him have the rest of Europe. And I probably would have been a guy who said, hey, we've got to be involved. Now, I have totally flipped. I am very libertarian on let's stay out of everybody's business here. Where do you stand on what should we be doing in Ukraine?
Yeah, so let's start with your principled question before we get to the Ukraine, because we're in a mess there because we've blustered and bluffed and drawn lines in the sand that we didn't intend to keep. The first point is the first duty of the federal government is to defend us from enemies, foreign and domestic. The 9th and 10th Amendment envision a world where almost all governance functions that might be necessary can and should be delivered at the state and local level. But border security and national security policy has to be done at the federal level. And so this is the first duty of government, to protect the 310 million U.S. citizens. That means that we need allies in the world, and that means we need to keep our promises. But the way adults act is you make very few commitments, and you give your word very rarely. But when you do, you really intend to keep it. I think inside the conservative movement, there's room for a continuum of views that are more isolationist to more engaged internationally. But both sides should agree with the fundamental principle that it's U.S. national security interests that drive those decisions, and you don't give your word lightly. And when you do, you intend to keep it. So then to your Ukrainian question, the problem isn't today. The problem is in the years that led up to today, where we just gave our word weekly, and now we've reduced our level of total national security investment to the place that we've abandoned the U.S. historic doctrine of being able to fight two large-scale wars at a time. And if you make that sort of investment, you rarely have to do it because people actually believe your word. We're at a place right now where our enemies don't fear us and our friends don't trust us.
So where do we do what? If you were in the Senate right now and John McCain said, "My friends, we've got to fight. We've got to stand up to Putin," what would you be saying?
Yeah, I don't think we have the level of preparedness and investment to be able to do that. I think that the mistakes that were made were well before today when we drew lines in the sand. We promised we were going to deploy anti-ballistic missile systems in Poland and the Czech Republic, and we didn't fulfill our commitments there, and that's why Putin got what he got here. But fundamentally, this president has a naive liberal worldview that somehow thinks international aggression is out of date. We're being schooled by Putin. We're being schooled in Iran. We're being schooled in many places across the globe. And the diminution of the U.S. brand and credibility around the world is bad for us and bad for the world.
Talking to Ben Sasse, he is running for Senate in Nebraska.
Ben, speaking of being schooled, where do you stand on Common Core?
Common Core is such a disaster. The fundamental duties of government at the national level don't ever have anything to do with trying to raise my kids. There are a lot of, I think only 9 states are like Nebraska, and being fortunate to have had a governor that has resisted Common Core. But it is a tool for driving political correctness in the future. We need to resist it. I heard in your intro you talking about FreedomWorks. Obviously, there are issues in life where FreedomWorks and I differ, but I really love the work they've done against Common Core. The war on our children and the federalization of childhood. Government can't fix most problems. But government can make them worse. And when you see problems of dependency rising up in local communities and the feds come in and try to fill that vacuum, what they actually do is they subsidize the absence of mom and dad. Common Core is a disaster.
Rand Paul recently said, love that, by the way, but Rand Paul recently said something like, we're going to have to Republicans, in order to win, are just going to have to agree to disagree on social issues this time and just leave it alone, sort of. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but I want to give Rand something back here. So I am a social conservative on all these issues. I think that the traditional family predates government. Government doesn't create this meaning. The great verb at the beginning of the Constitution is secure. We the people come together to secure these God-given and natural and inalienable rights. Government doesn't give them to us. And the family is the core building block of society.
Well, but isn't that what Rand Paul is saying? That the government has absolutely no business in anybody's business. They don't have a right to. Why do we have to get our marriage recognized by the federal government other than for tax reasons?
Yeah, I was going to go exactly to where you landed there, which is when government gets as big as it is, it crowds out freedom and it crowds out local community. We're 41 years into the national tragedy that is Roe v. Wade and abortion on demand. 55 million babies have been aborted in this country in the last 4 decades. But Uncle Sam took a new and more perilous step just 2 months ago, as because of Obamacare, we now actively subsidize abortion. Obamacare is the single greatest attack on religious liberty in U.S. history. And so when government's that big, it does crowd out freedom. But one of the things I love about Rand is, as a committed federalist, he tries to drive these issues back to the state and local level. And look what he did yesterday, going to Berkeley. Conservatives need to actually win some arguments. We can't just preach to the choir. We need to go and persuade some people, and I really love the way he does outreach.
I agree with you 100%. I'd love to have you back, Ben, because I'd like to hear where because you said, I disagree with FreedomWorks and things. I'd like to know some more. I see what Mike Lee likes in you and why he endorsed you, because you sound to me very much like Mike Lee, and that I mean that as a compliment. I can hear the Constitution running through your veins, which is very, very good. But I'd like to have you back if you wouldn't mind.
I'd love to. The Constitution is the American creed. We need to celebrate it. And on the FreedomWorks point, what I simply mean is I love so much of their policy. I just mean they got their endorsement wrong in this race.
Okay, all right, Ben, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you want to support, I wish there was a website or something that people...
Ben for Nebraska, BENFOR Nebraska.com.
Ben for Nebraska. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Ben.
Thanks, Glenn.
You bet. Bye-bye. I'll take either of these
He's
guys.
Great.